The 1930s was the age of streamlining, the age of innovation and speed. Countries were competing for the all-elusive top spot to produce those record-breaking runs. In the UK, the LNER and the LMS were taking intercity travel to new levels, and each were competing to shave precious minutes off between them, giving them the title of the fastest service. In Germany, longer routes between cities prompted the German Ministry of Transport to create the Deutsche Reichsbahn-Gesellschaft, or the DRG for short. The DRG's main role was to run the now nationalised railways, in an attempt to satisfy the reparation creditors following the end of the First World War. When the division was created, the Allied powers tagged a 15 billion gold-marked bill on top, which the company was expected to chip away at annually using the railway's profits. To keep the costs down, the DRG began to standardise their rolling stock and even had revenue to look into alternative forms of motion to help them ultimately cut those costs. One cost in particular the railway wanted to cut was the use of steam engines. Steam engines, especially used cross-country, were large, antiquated machines that the DRG mostly inherited from old railways when they were controlled by the state. Because of the war, little development had been done, so the engines were outdated and costly to run, and nowhere near as efficient as the modern engines produced by the likes of the LNER and the LMS. Elsewhere, the Wagenbau-Görlitz Corporation had been producing both locomotives and carriages since 1849 and were experimenting with new technology, namely diesel technology. They understood the limitations of steam power and knew that diesel traction was the way ahead. It was cleaner than steam, the preparation time was almost instant compared to steam, and the use of a firelighter, a cleaner and a fireman was almost redundant. It was literally a get up and go. When the company got the order to design a new fast train, the company got to work, but as well as looking at the inside, they looked on the outside as well. Wagenbau looked at other engines such as Bugatti cars and the interurban Bullet from America as inspiration, and would experiment with designs in wind tunnels. The company also knew that weight was key and stripped out anything that was going to weigh the engine down. That being said, sheet metal covered the engine in an attempt to cut air resistance, including the bogies. The bogies are also to note here, as they were also unique. In almost all types of rolling stock, the bogies would be situated under a carriage, one set near the front and one set near the back. Powered or unpowered, this arrangement provides stability across the whole vehicle while handling the weight of the upper portion evenly. The new engine had bogies no one had ever seen, as the middle set would sit between the carriages. This arrangement, called Jacob's bogies, had some key advantages, as the gangway and the coupling was now being supported by the bogie. It was found to be much more stable, especially at higher speeds. It was also found to be much safer in a derailment, as the carriages were less prone to collapse. Inside each coach boasted a 12-cylinder Maybach diesel engine with a direct current generator attached. The generator in turn drove an individual traction motor, giving the train over 800 horsepower, perfect for its top speed of over 95 miles an hour, one of the fastest trains of the age. The DRG named the two-car prototype the Hamburg Flyer, but its looks and design gave the train the affectionate nickname of the Flying Hamburger. It also didn't help that it carried a cream livery with a violet-red streak along its middle. For the 196 passengers that the Flyer would carry, the ride was amazing. It was smooth, it was fast, and it was fairly quiet compared to steam engines. The seating was an open plan arrangement with foldable table seats. Upon arrival, Large luggage would be taken out of sight in the baggage hold, while a waiter would be on hand to take your order of light refreshment from the small bar situated in the middle of the train. All of this cost the same as a second-class standard ticket, and almost at once the new train began to sell out. On the tracks, the infrastructure had to make changes to accommodate for the faster speed, and this included the signalling system. In the days where manual signallers were key, there was a real worry that signallers wouldn't be fast enough or made mistakes, and at those speeds, the results would be deadly. It was quickly recommended that new electromagnetic signalling system that was being developed in Berlin be used. The locomotive was fixed with a magnet, and electromagnets were fitted along the line. If the line was clear, then no current was fed to the electromagnet, but if there was danger, a current was sent, and if the magnet picked it up, it would send a signal to deploy the brakes, stopping the engine at the next signal. But the system got clever, and as the flow of current could be controlled and adjusted, this meant different signals could be sent to the engine depending on the frequency, and soon the signalling system could tell the driver multiple issues, including overspeeding. The success of the Flying Hamburger led to the development and the implementation of the SVT 137 in 1934. 33 sets were made, however all was put on hold during the war, but the diesels were confiscated by the French during the occupation. In 1949, the diesels were returned to Germany, where they continued to serve until 1957. The Flying Hamburger was stored for a time, but eventually the majority was scrapped, with just the driving cab, saloon and engine compartment being preserved. They were then restored and placed in the Nuremberg Transport Museum for all to see. While the majority of the world was breaking records with steam, it was the Flying Hamburger's foundation that paved the way for diesel, and it was this legacy that allowed diesel traction to be the most utilised rail traction to date.